Where'd you put it at? Where'd you put it at? On the
podium.
Okay, if you will, on the podium, there's a sign-up sheet. Pretty simple. Those for it, those again it. Need to put your name on it so we can, because we will divide up time in the committee time we had. So it's on the podium on a yellow sheet. Like I said, we have a sign-up sheet on the podium for you, for and against. Yes, please go ahead, Houston. We'll start in about 2 minutes. Okay, looks like we're getting ready just on a fun Monday. Appreciate to call this meeting to order. The subcommittee, regulated industries, the alcohol tobacco subcommittee, called to order. Had a nice volunteer. Ms. Bennett would like to open us with a word of prayer.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let us pray. Our Creator God, we just are so grateful to you for allowing us to come in here this day. Dear Lord, continue to be with us as we take care of the business of your people. Guide our hearts, our minds, our souls, our spirits, and our reasonings. It is in the Creator's name that I pray and say thank you. Amen.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that. We'll call this, we'll just check. The members of this subcommittee are myself, Mr. Dubnik, who is not here today. I'll be chairing it. Karen Bennett, Lee Hawkins, Jan Jones, Dale Washburn, and Bruce Williamson. Those will be the ones who'll be taking part. Other members can ask questions as we move along. Since there's quite a number of people in the room, what I've chosen to do is Representative Gaines will have about 5 minutes or whatever he needs. Then we'll divide up the rest of the time between the halves. Hopefully we'll get through your testimony. Hopefully we will. I think the for and against, make sure that you're not repeating each other as we move through. Committee members, of course, you can ask questions at will, and I hope you do. Mr. Gaines, floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate everybody being here on what I know is not a session day. So thank you all for your time this afternoon and considering House Bill 1260. And we're working off of LC 365782S.
You will notice that is a substitute
Yes, sir.
that was turned in this morning, I assume.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now if you will, explain your bill and then also the changes in
Okay.
1260.
So I'll generally go over the bill and then be happy to go over some of the changes. But what this legislation is it's a vape registry bill aimed at getting the vape marketplace in Georgia under control. Right now, we have no enforcement of vapes that are on the shelves in Georgia, and I believe it's imperative that we get a handle on what's happening in our state. There's countless examples of young people in Georgia who've ended up vaping just one time and it changes their lives. In fact, youth vaping is up by 2,000% over the last couple of years, 2,000%. Sometimes it's a flavored vape that gets them hooked, or other times it's a fentanyl laced vape that puts them in the hospital or worse. From the 12-year-old boy in Leesburg who tried a vape laced with THC and fentanyl to a 13-year-old in Dalton who was pressured into smoking a fentanyl laced vape pen that caused a stroke. There are countless examples of the negative impacts vapes are having on our young people. And the reality is the FDA has put in place some restrictions to try to protect these young people, but there's no enforcement mechanism in what the FDA has done. Chinese manufacturers are flooding the marketplace with illegal vapes that are targeting children. In fact, just last year, the number one selling vape on product was Elf Bar, which is an illegal Chinese manufactured product. In fact, I brought some examples that were just purchased here in the last couple of weeks in Georgia of illegal product that is on the shelves in Georgia. Lost Mary is one example of a Chinese distributed product that is not legally eligible to be sold. But one of the challenges is that, and then we'll talk about this, but retailers actually don't know what is legal and what is illegal to be sold. Again, we have no idea what's in these products. They're not FDA approved. Nobody is monitoring the illicit products, and retailers, again, don't even know what's legal to be sold because they don't have a list of what is legal and what is not legal. The FDA has authorized approximately 30 vapes that are, again, authorized, but there's an unknown number of products that submitted an application for a pre-market tobacco application by September 9th, 2020 that are pending. All of those products, so long as they have not been denied, are legally able to be sold. Some other states have passed vape registry bills, including in Louisiana and Alabama. Louisiana, where they passed the vape registry bill, it has over 300 products that are eligible to be sold, and Alabama has over 1,400 eligible products. So as long as a product has not been denied, they're eligible to be sold, or if they've not submitted an application. And again, if they've been denied or if they're not submitting an application, they're not legally being sold in the United States. And this bill will ensure what's being sold in Georgia is legal. Again, the retailers and convenience stores, I believe you'll hear from them today, but I believe they're supportive of this legislation because they want to know what they're selling is legal and make sure that the products that they're putting on their shelves are complying with federal law. This legislation would create an opt-in system for manufacturers to have their products sold in Georgia so long as they're legally able to be sold. The Department of Ag would have oversight and enforce the legislation. We're also working separately to ensure there's funding in the budget for them to do so. And we've added in one of the main changes in the latest sub, Mr. Chairman, is this is all subject to appropriations to make sure the Department of Ag has funding necessary to enforce this legislation. The bill will bring in some revenue by requiring those who register to pay a fee. There's also will be, as we'll go into one of the other main changes in the sub, and maybe the most significant is the differences in the fines that are paid. They are significant fines for those who do not comply with the law. And so those fines would also bring in revenue. You may also hear from today, I certainly have over the last couple of weeks, from law enforcement across the state that have seen countless issues with vaping products. And I believe our law enforcement, and especially our school resource officers, recognize there's a need to get this issue under control. I do want to mention some of the points you'll probably hear from some of the vaping industry who may oppose this bill, because I think it's important to go ahead and explain and outline the reasons why I disagree with some of the challenges I've heard over the last couple of weeks. And those questions you may want to ask those who oppose the bill is, would this bill prohibit selling anything that is currently legal? The answer is no, it would not prohibit selling anything that's currently legal. And wouldn't anyone selling a vape want clarity on what is legal and what is not legal? And then you also hear from a lot of people who may say the FDA process is broken. And if you believe the FDA process is broken, maybe they should argue that with the FDA. we can't fix the FDA from here, but we need to enforce the law. And I think it's important that we should all agree these products should be regulated. If not, wouldn't we argue the same for an unregulated pharmaceutical drug not approved by the FDA? Isn't this similar? Others will argue this is a good stop smoking tool. And for those who use this as such a tool, there will still be legal regulated vape on the shelves. It's important, though, that what is on the shelves is legal and regulated. And again, nothing, Mr. Chairman, that is legal today will be made illegal by this bill. So that's generally the legislation. In terms of to your question on the changes, the most significant changes between the sub and the original is again changing, adding at the very end of the legislation on lines 326 to 328, that it's all subject to appropriations. And then the other significant changes were in the fines and fees, and that is on page 8. And what we've done is, in working with the retailers and working with the various folks who have tried to give input on this legislation, is separating out under 20 vapor products on the shelves versus over 20. And the idea being under 20, may just be accidental retail leaving them on the shelves, versus over 20 is more of an intentional leaving vape products on the shelf that they're selling illicitly. So for under 20 vapor products in the original bill, those were not separated out, but in this one they are. And you see the fines that are listed there. We also base the fines all based on a percentage or a times amount of the retail value. So for under 20 vapor products, you see that the first fine is 5 times the retail value. For over 20 products, it's 25 times the retail value with a minimum of $15,000. So they are significant fines, particularly over 20 vapor products. That's the main change that we've worked on in this sub, is the fines and then the subject to appropriations. And Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer questions, or we can hear from folks and answer questions, or however you want to handle it.
We'll do both. The committee, you be thinking if you have any questions. I just have a couple. When looking at the original bill last night, and you answered partly, adding at the end now, is there a fiscal note what this is going to cost the Department of Ag?
We don't have a fiscal note at this point. Don't expect it to be a tremendous cost, but there will be costs associated, and we have begun working in the budget process to secure funding for the department to enforce this.
Does this only regulate nicotine-based vape or all?
Nicotine-based vape.
Okay. I had a question on line 183 in the original bill, which I wouldn't know in the sub. It seemed curious to me that, and maybe we can have a lawyer in the room answer that, seizing without warrant. It's just unusual to me. Is there a reason for that? I think I'm not an attorney.
Trying to
but
find
when I
on
read
the
through
new,
this,
new bill, and Sean Marie may be able to, not to put her on the spot, but she may be able to help find it in the new bill.
in the, or which number are you, Ms. Jean Marie? 14. I'm looking in the original bill, 36, 5715, on line 183. Just a curiosity to me that labeled to seize without warrant. Is that normal sort of thing, or is that
I think that's the way it is in Title III.
okay?
I think that's something that, if I'm not mistaken, that the author is having looked at, just to make sure that that there's no potential issue with that. But it is the way that it's currently written in Title III.
Okay. Ms. Bennett, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to my cohort, the Majority Caucus Vice Chairman. I sit at the Minority Caucus Vice Chairman, in case you didn't know that.
Vice chairman are the best, right?
Vice Chairman of the best. Mr. Chairman raised a question that was not one of my original questions, but I'd like for you to point to me in the bill where it says it's only limited to nicotine-based vape versus vape. And part of my curiosity is we don't know what's in the vape, which is why we're here today. So can you point to me in the bill where it says specifically nicotine-based? That's my first question.
Let's see. Line 22. The liquid solution
Okay.
containing nicotine.
Nicotine-based.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is there any reason why it's limited to nicotine-based versus any kind of vape, since we don't know what's in the vape
Well,
products?
what other kind of, I mean, this is what would be legally able to be sold. So I still think that even if a product is being marketed as nicotine based, but it doesn't have nicotine in it, that would fall under this bill to make sure it's what's in there is compliant with the law. That makes
Thank you.
sense.
That was my curiosity. Mr. Chair, may I ask another question? We talk about legal versus illegal, and I want to thank you for bringing something to us that protects the public, primarily our children. And is there currently a legal age that children can or cannot walk into a gas station or a convenient market right now and purchase these items?
Supposed to be 21.
Okay, thank you so much. And right now, so what makes it legal versus illegal is whether or not it's been approved by the FDA. Is that correct?
Either approved or pending and has not been denied.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
28, is that Caucus Chairman Williams?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the author of the bill, I'm running through this committee substitute, trying to catch up. You mentioned registration fees early in your testimony. Is the and I'm looking at line 90, payment of $1,000 for each vapor product for the first time a vapor product manufacturer. So is it the registration fees limited just to the manufacturer?
Yes.
Okay, and then just, do you have any sense of how many, and the bill would only allow for legal vaping products to be sold in Georgia. Is there any estimate about how many currently legal vaping
Sure.
products there are in Georgia?
I would guess that we would be somewhere around what Louisiana and Alabama did. So Louisiana, there are differences between them, but Louisiana's was about 300 to 400 and Alabama was 1,400. So I'm guessing around 1,000 would be
Well, 300, that'd be 300,000. So a range of estimated fees paid by the manufacturers for the currently for the legal products seem to be anywhere from 300,000 to for the initial product. So 300,000 to 1.2 million or whatever the high number was you said. Then it'd be a quarter of that on renewal. So my question is, I was trying to get my mind around the fact that it would be a cost of compliance to the state,
that's right.
but in your estimation, would these fees adequately compensate the state of Georgia for regulating?
I do think
the
that
industry?
the fees would take care of a significant portion of the cost. You know, there's a question of whether we can actually dedicate the fees for that purpose, which is so why we made it clear that it's subject to appropriations, because the fees may go into the general fund and then we would need to appropriate beyond that. But I do think that the fines and fees would, and in addition to what you were saying, Mr. Chairman, the fines are pretty significant, which I'd expect there would be some fines that would also bring in additional revenue.
Which, if I have a follow-up question from
Sure.
Yes, sir.
So which begs the question on at the retail, the first, let me see, what line was that?
191.
Yeah, 191. So what, just educate me, because I haven't bought any of this, but do you have an average price of a vape product? Because the fine would be 10, for the first offense, it'd be a fine of 5 times the retail value of the vapor products involved, which would be,
My understanding is about between $10 and $20.
okay, so it'd be, all right, it's $20. It could be $50 to $100 per item, illegal item being sold.
That's right. On under 20 products, but over 20 products, it would be 25 times the retail value.
Right, and I was just looking
Yeah,
at just the
yeah.
first time of offense. So could be some substantial fines involved in that. That answers. my
The other,
question.
the other thing I think is important is the agriculture department is already doing checks potentially on hemp products. So this would be Representative Ridley actually just texted me during the appropriations hearings about, checking those hemp products because they'll be in the same type of place. I think that's important to note that there may be some overlap in cost there.
That answers my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Hawkins.
You seem to be an expert now on this vaping stuff, and I appreciate
I've learned
that.
more about vaping here recently.
So I'm gonna ask you a few questions
new.
because I don't know myself. Are all vaping products, do they all contain nicotine?
I don't know that I for sure know the answer to that. What the FDA though regulates is nicotine based vapes.
But we've
I mean,
got-
some vapes probably do not, but they're not legal.
Right, okay, so the ones that do not contain nicotine would be illegal vaping products?
If they contain like marijuana or something like that, yes, they're
Well, of
illegal.
course,
Yeah.
marijuana. And I'm not trying to trap you with
Yeah,
a
no,
question.
no,
I'm
no.
trying to understand exactly where we are. And so that makes sense, because really, you're requiring FDA approval of manufacturing, So if it does not contain nicotine, then this would still affect those that don't because you're requiring
You're requiring-
FDA.
That's
Right. And that's fine. I mean, I do remember in the past, and you can help me on this, there's some people getting sick on some of the vaping products.
Yeah, a lot. There's all sorts of examples of people having no idea what's in a vape product that they're
Right.
purchasing, and it changes their life forever.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you.
I guess I have one other question. So Representative, you make the statement about that Alabama has 1,500 products that meet the requirements. And I assume theirs are the same as what's in this bill, and Louisiana has 300 or 400. What's the difference? That's a dramatic difference. What's the difference of the bills?
Well, some of it would be that the manufacturers have to opt in, so they would have to choose whether they want to sell in that state, and so and this bill would be an opt-in process. So a manufacturer would have to show that either they've been approved or they're on the pending list. And so it'd be up to the manufacturer if they want to sell in Georgia. It's not like the FDA is going to send them a list. The manufacturer, under penalty of perjury, has to submit that they have either been approved or pending. So there could just be a difference in those states of how many manufacturers wish to sell in those states. I also think the Louisiana law is quite a bit newer, and so there probably hasn't been as much time for manufacturers to get their names on the list.
Do we have any other questions, Ms. Bennett?
That's one. Do you have record of a youth or anyone actually dying from illegal use of vapor products?
So I know I mentioned in the beginning, there are plenty of examples. In fact, I can pull up one that I had earlier. Now there's a story from Dalton. It's a 13-year-old who smoked a fentanyl-laced vape pen that caused a stroke, put in a medically induced coma for 3 weeks. Doctors told his mother may never wake up. Suffered permanent brain damage, has no movement in his left arm, and lost sight in his right eye. Still alive, but a long road to recovery. That's just one example. But I do know there are examples of young people who've died as well.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go on to guest speakers and comments. I have to warn the committee, Chairman Powell gave us a very short time for this meeting, and I would like to do is, especially those from out of town, I wanted to let you go first. I think I have 6, 7 people, because we may have to postpone this vote because we certainly are not going to have time to hear everybody's testimony. So if you're from out of town, you're one of the 7, would you please make it to the microphone? I'd like to hear you first. And we've only got about 5 minutes before the fine chairman kicks us out. You haven't? Good. If you will, just tell us who you are, who you're with, and be as brief as you can.
I am the Director of Legislative and External Affairs for a trade group known as the American Vapor Manufacturers Association, here today to urge strong opposition to HB 1260 because it is a wolf in sheep's clothing that threatens about $10 million in excise tax revenue and over 1,500 jobs in the state of Georgia. And for what? To tie Georgia's regulatory system on vapor products to a federal regulatory system that both the Fifth and the 11th Circuit have decried as arbitrary, capricious, and illegal. Indeed, the Fifth Circuit, in their opinion, they said that the FDA had sent manufacturers on a wild goose chase. And contrary to the claims of proponents, this is not a simple solution, nor has it ever been shown to work. The Louisiana law, that is currently enjoined by a Louisiana court, so it is not being enforced. Alabama and Oklahoma, those laws have been on the books for more than a year. No enforcement is happening in Oklahoma or Alabama, yet it still has closed down some shops that think if enforcement happens, I'm out of business. So let's be clear about three things, because I know we're short on time. Youth vaping is not up. Youth vaping has declined by 60% since 2019. It is its lowest level since 2013. Second, yes, there were deaths associated with vaping. Illicit THC products filled and sold by drug dealers caused those accidents, those deaths. Vape shops aren't selling those products. They're sold by drug dealers. Drug dealers aren't going to be scared by a regulatory bill. And lastly, this bill is a creation of America's largest cigarette company, Altria. And they have every right in the world to lobby for regulations that favor their business. But you have to know that in October, Altria blamed disposable vaping products on their cigarette sales going down. Just last week, Barclays investment firm said Altria may have to mark down its earnings for fiscal year 2024 unless you have a sudden gigantic enforcement blitz against disposable vaping products. And lastly, over 9,000 vaping products have been accepted for scientific review through the FDA process, but solely because they did not submit those applications by September 2020, they are banned under this bill. So the idea that we don't know what's in these products, we don't know who's manufacturing, who's importing them, 9,000 products are being sold all around the United States that FDA is reviewing today, knows where the manufacturers are, and can go after them if they so please. So in conclusion, enforcement is going to be extremely difficult. Virginia has estimated $2.1 million. Washington State, $2.5 million. This is not simple. This has never been shown to work. And I thank you very much for your time. Glad to answer any questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dylan. Any committee members' questions? Thank you. Who else is out of town? Move shy.
Apologies. Not the best public speaker, but I appreciate your time, making time for us. My name's Dylan. That was Greg Conley. I
sorry.
am, no, you're totally fine. I own vape stores in Savannah and Columbus. My business partner and I have 9 stores throughout the state. We've been in business for 8 years since the opening of our first store in Richmond Hill. We employ 28 people, and each of our stores serves about 500 to 1,500 unique customers a month. I just wanted to, talk to you guys a little bit about just operations of the store and the kind of customers we see. I think a lot of times our industry gets a bad rap since a lot of people aren't familiar with it. The common misconception is that every customer we see is, born, February 19th, 2003, just fresh 21. But the fact of the matter is the vast majority of our customers, or at least, over 50%, are adults over 35 who are just seeking a healthier alternative to conventional tobacco products. Our favorite kinds of customer are those that have been smoking for longer than I've been alive, who are exceptionally skeptical about the products, but when they make the leap, whether it's because a family member pressured them to, or, whatever reason it was, they spend the money, the, $50, $60 on the products and inevitably pick up some kind of, based on our sales, and I'd be more than happy to provide the committee with our sales data, some kind of butterscotch or menthol or, strawberry kiwi is our 4th bestseller, or peach pear even. And they come back a week later just glowing. And you can see, they tell us stories about how they can finally smell and taste again. They can walk up the stairs without getting winded again. And it really is one of the best feelings, just working the stores and seeing these stories of these people, or hearing the stories of these people rather. We are members of the GVA, and GVA member stores have, as far as I know, before the 18 plus and 21 plus laws were passed in Georgia, have been enforcing those by our discretion willingly, just because it's the right thing to do. We don't want to sell to minors. I mean, the fact of the matter is, our most reliable customer are, adults. Like, and why would we want to sell to these children when they don't need to start in the first place? We get adults who come into our stores who want to start vaping, and we encourage them not to at financial loss to ourselves. We're here to provide a safer alternative for people who are already doing something that's harmful, as opposed to starting people on a path towards nicotine use. And like I say, it is, in our opinion and backed by the data, a safer alternative. But why start something that you don't need? We've met prior with the Department of Revenue to help them enforce their tax policy and sort of give them clarification on what products are what in the state. And props to them, because their process is amazing. But we've always supported common sense regulation of our industry. We want, sort of to what the bill's author said, we want common sense regulation, but unfortunately this bill is a death blow to our industry in Georgia. As Greg said, it's an almost 10 million, the excise tax brought in almost $10 million in taxes in 2022. And our industry would just be absolutely destroyed. The fact of the matter is, while it is true that 300 to 13,000 or whatever the exact number is, products are currently legal under the Louisiana, Alabama, Oklahoma bills, the products that are still under review are very likely to be declined by the FDA. The amount of PMTAs that was initially submitted to the FDA was on the order of 6 million, and currently they've granted marketing granted orders for 23 of them, all big tobacco owned, all high nicotine products. And as one of the members asked, 0 milligram products, none of them have been approved. So all of these adult vapors or smokers who want a pathway towards zero nicotine will have that pathway completely stripped away. Part of what we do, and hopefully perhaps some of you guys have seen vape stores, we have massive shelves with all sorts of bottles of liquid. Part of that is we have a variety of different nicotine levels as an option to sort of step down gradually towards zero nicotine. And none of the products currently that are on the marketing granted orders list are 0 milligrams. So these people, I mean, they would be stuck. The vast majority of the products are 5%, which is exceptionally high amount of nicotine, would be stuck using that with no pathway towards getting off. You can do it cold turkey, but it is very difficult, which is unfortunate. As for some of the concerns that were brought up, I believe sorry, I don't know the gentleman's name, the member who is asking questions about people getting sick in 2019, Ivali, and Greg referenced, is people were buying illegal products. Unfortunately, the CDC website didn't clarify. They called them vape products, were THC vape products that had been bought off the streets illegally and were cut with vitamin E acetate, which is a thinning agent, that were doing irreparable damage to people's lungs. So these are not vape stores that are selling these products. Vape stores like ours that would, be following the law. These are people buying them on the street. Same with fentanyl or PCP or, illegal marijuana laced products. I mean, it's just targeting the wrong people. Every time I read one of these articles, and I understand that they are, somewhat common at this point, it's just, they bought them from a friend, or they bought them from a friend of a friend. And unfortunately, they're probably buying empty products from Alibaba or God knows where and filling them up in their basement and just selling them to God knows who. Sorry, this went on a little bit longer than I wanted and a little bit rambly, but I hope I gave you guys some useful information. And I thank you for your time.
And you are Dylan,
Yes, sir.
correct? Just one quick question, then they're here. You'll run me off in just a second. Looking at the Alabama list of 1,500 products, can you not, I mean, those are ones that are, I guess, available for you to possibly sell. Is that not enough to sustain your business?
Theoretically, it might be. So the FDA has currently said that all products that they haven't issued guidance on yet will be issued guidance by, I believe it's June. Greg is confirming and he would know better than I. But the problem is, as I said, the list of 6 million that the FDA has currently issued guidance on turned into 23. So that current list that will be issued guidance on by June, I mean, if 6 million turns into 23, how many is a few thousand going to turn into?
Well, I guess that doesn't really answer my question,
I'm
though,
sorry.
Dylan, is that if there's 1,500 that are assumed have a similar law to this in Alabama that have FDA some kind of approval. I don't know the language that well to comment on that.
They're just
Seems like that they have some type of approval to be able to be sold.
no. I mean, they are just currently under guidance or under
But
judgment.
we're
So-
learning here.
Yeah, so they just haven't issued judgment on them yet.
Okay.
Meaning, if we had that many products, it might theoretically be doable, but the FDA will issue judgment on them, and likely, as you know, history has shown us, they'll be denied.
Okay, thank you.
Could I
Mhm.
ask a quick
Yes, sir.
question? So I guess my question is, if the FDA does deny those products, you're suggesting that y'all would just sell illegal products?
So currently the FDA, as Greg mentioned, has been using its enforcement discretion to just not even send letters to the vast majority of these synthetic nicotine PMTAs that were filed. I believe it's only on the 10 or 20 that they've actually sent out letters to, and those were actually products that were seen as marketing to children, and the rest of them they haven't said anything about. So they
But-
just decided not to act on it in
But
the
those
same way.
Those products
apologies.
would be illegal and you would intend to continue to sell them.
We would have to shut our doors.
But this bill does not change what is legal and what is illegal. If it's legal today and this bill passes, it'll be legal tomorrow.
Gotcha. I mean, excuse me. Oh yeah, there are a lot. So the 5th Circuit and 11th Circuit, as Greg said, have deemed the PMTA process illegal, and we haven't received any guidance from the FDA saying that we're breaking any rules. And the fact of the matter is, if you look at things like the medical marijuana industry in Georgia, that is also technically federally illegal. And the FDA uses whichever governmental organization is in charge of that uses its enforcement discretion to not enforce the law in the same way that clearly they're doing in the state of Georgia, and not sending us any letters saying that we're doing anything wrong.
From what I can tell, and I'll let you finish, but I think the FDA has just been overwhelmed and unable to do its job to enforce the just crazy amount of influx of particularly Chinese manufactured vapes. And so I think that they just haven't been able to enforce what they've proposed. And
Yeah.
that's what this bill does.
I mean, our, federal taxes give them or allot them $750 million to do their jobs. Frankly, as a taxpayer myself, as a business owner who pays taxes as well, I don't see any reason we should be giving tax to the federal government and then doubly paying, spending our Georgia tax dollars to enforce a law that it's their job to enforce in the first place with $750 million.
Okay, we have a question. Chairman Carpenter is online. Casey, can you hear us?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I just had a question for him. He talked a little bit, you talked a little bit about the 0% nicotine products. What percentage of your sales are those actual products?
Ooh, I would have to look. I imagine not high. The vast majority, as far as e-liquid sales, are going to be 3 milligrams. The conversion's a bit difficult to, relate, but it's 0.3% by volume, which is about 18 times less nicotine than one might find in a Vuse or a Juul or any other similar product. So most people are very, very low on the spectrum of nicotine that aren't using these, disposable products or sort of gas station products. But if I had to put a number on it, I'd say maybe 5%. It's not a high number, but like I said, the vast majority are, the next step up, which is 0.3% or 3 milligram.
And zero nicotine would not be included in this bill.
0 milligram, the FDA deems as a tobacco product.
Zero nicotine, though, would not be included with this legislation.
Okay, yeah, I'll take your word for it. I am not a legal expert, so I wouldn't know.
Okay. Any other committee members have any questions for the, okay, so what we're going to do, we're on top of Chairman Powell's time. So I believe these, you're the only two of the 7 that from out of town. Okay, the rest of, okay, you know, I called off the members that you need to talk to. I will work diligently this afternoon to try to find time to bring y'all back together. And in the meantime, I think both sides need to take time and make sure we educate the committee, because this is a very dense bill, very complex, and we'll make sure we get it right for Georgians and their safety and their business interests too. Just a just a hint, just a comment on emails. Okay, those of y'all who are sending us that you're winning the competition for the most emails right now. But those of y'all who are asking your people to do that, put where they're from, put who you are. And, you know, if you represent Al Williams, say it, and say you live in Midway or wherever you're from, would help us a lot. And you need to make sure you're contacting your folks with help. But I will work with the bill sponsor. We'll try to find time. Those of y'all who are interested, please work with the committee. This meeting is adjourned.
We're good.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I want to welcome y'all to the House Regulated Industries Committee. As a preface to that, I want to thank Chairman Jaspers, and I will apologize to him and to the people that were in attendance. I didn't realize that that was such a controversial bill that was before him. And I could tell Brother Williams was really enamored with it the way he's yawning. But there'll probably be, he'll have a call another meeting to get on into it, because as is the policy of this committee and the chairman, that everybody's got a right to be heard before we pass judgment on a piece of legislation. That being said, we have a number of bills in front of us today. First up, House Bill 598. And I think we have some of the members of the committee that are on Zoom today. For some of the members here, I'll not mention their names, but I appreciate them being here when so many of them had an opportunity to go play golf on a glorious afternoon. But I want to thank them for being in attendance today. And to the members that are here on the Zoom meeting, I'm sure they'll let me know who you are. All right, first up, Representative Cox, House Bill 598. Floor is yours.
Chairman. The bill 598, which is LC 365531. This bill is in regards to having more safety and regulation as it relates to certain organizations that are listed under amateur status. So what I would like for you to do is to go to page 2, lines 23, 4, 5, 6, and line 28. Currently, under the state of Georgia, we have the definition of amateur. These 5 organizations we're wanting to remove out of that definition for the main reason of safety. Currently, there is no regulation which they're falling under to protect the athletes that are involved. The other organizations that are listed, which are all the organizations, are lines 14 through 29, but some of those, which I can go through each in detail, give me just a second here. On line 15, Georgia High School Association. Line 16, the National Collegiate Athletic Association. We have Team Georgia Amateur Wrestling, which is line F. USA Wrestling, line G. National High School Coaches Association, which is H, which is line 21. The North American Sports Karate Association, which is 22, and the Professional Karate Commission as well. All of those are not listed as sanctioned combat sports, and they have their own safety regulations which they fall under. In regards to the remaining organizations, one of which is the USA Boxing Amateur Athletic Union and Golden Gloves, they're recognized as Olympic organizations that actually have a national safety standard, which is similar to what we're trying to do with the 5 that are unregulated at this point. So the goal is to remove the names that were crossed out, and to give you a little better clarity. In line 23, the International Sports Kickboxing, which is also known as ISKA, they support what we're asking to do. The United States Kickboxing Association, line L, has not been in existence since 1972. So it's not even an organization that's existing. And the other 3 have had 0 response to us on if they're okay or not okay with being regulated. You'll also find a packet here. It's the Georgia Athletic and Entertainment Commission from the Secretary of State's website. This is basically the form that we're wanting them to fill out so that they become regulated within the state. so that we can make sure that we have certain health safety features while they're in the kickboxing world or the combat fighting world. Some of these, there's an example where someone took a headshot several years back, and if they did not have trained physicians at ringside in EMTs and would have waited for 911, that person probably would not have made it. But because they were able to address that, it saved someone's life. So what we're asking is to remove those 5 names, have them become under the authority of the Georgia Athletic and Entertainment Commission under the Secretary of State. That's what we're asking to do.
All right, committee members. Any questions of the author of the bill before we ask for testimony? And I'm reluctant to do that, but we are going to do that just in case. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just curious on your martial arts sanctioning organization. I've seen a lot of cost to join. Tell me about $1,010. Why that?
I would let the Secretary of State's office, who is beside me, answer that question. The $10 sounds like a magic number. I'm not sure.
Sounds like it to me.
I'd have to get back to you on
Oh
what
my
exactly
God,
that pays.
what?
But I know that the athletic commission provides a lot of back and forth and support for these organizations. So when they're reaching out for their blood or eye exams or what have you, the athletic commission will review that and they'll issue the licenses themselves. So this sort of takes that onus off of the sanctioning organization, and it puts it with the Secretary of State's office that has the staff and the wherewithal to handle it.
Okay, thank you. Let me know when you get to the why the 10 1,000 here.
We'll do that.
All right, any other questions from any of the committee members? All right, as I understand what you're doing, all of these various organizations are being stricken from amateur status, and then they'll go in front of the Sports and Entertainment Commission for regulatory purposes.
Correct.
Very good. It's amazing I hadn't forgot that after 25 years. Only question that I might have to it is, well, I don't have a question because being a member of the legislature shouldn't be categorized as amateur. This is for professionals. All right. Now, I'm going to call for anyone that might have a brief comment. Do we have anyone out there that wants to comment on this? This is pretty good. This meeting's going pretty good so far. All right, committee members, questions? We have a motion. Number 20, we have a motion and we have a second. Do we have any further discussion? No amendments? All in favor say aye. Let's have it. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Well, I stand back. I didn't think there were any nays, but I will call for the nays. All right.
I think
Very
you
good.
said goodbye.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Good bill. You know, we tried to tell them there was a representative up here a few years ago that used to handle the boxing commission and all of this about the time the mixed martial arts was all getting involved. And we tried to take it all out then and put them under their own status. But there was some opposition at that time. I'm glad to see that's all dissipated over the years. All right, next up. Let's do a quick one. House Bill 1050. Chairman Mathiak.
Thank you, Chairman Powell and committee. I am so impressed that everybody's here on Magnificent Monday. I appreciate it. I bring forth today House Bill Substitute 1050, and the LC number is 365769S as in Sam. The only change that we made on Friday is on line 13. Supervisor means a person who meets the licensure and other, those three words, requirements established by the Standards Committee for that specialty which is being supervised. So this helps with whoever the supervisor is with board approval, and this was agreed on by everyone. We worked on that in sub the other day. On page 2, we are increasing from 80 to 90 quarter hours. And that just increases, or that everybody would have a master's degree before they'd have a doctorate. So that's why 38, 39, and 40 are crossed off. Then on page 3, line 52 through 57, that is code, we're citing code 24-5-501, and that's just a reinstatement of the code itself.
Questions? Number 26, that would be Mr. Ridley.
No question, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to say that this came through my subcommittee on Friday, didn't have any opposition against the bill and passed unanimously.
Very good. Thank you so much. 23. Yes, sir. Chairman Jaspers.
Just have a question, Representative. On line 38, so for licensure as a professional counselor, I guess, what did you say allowed you to cross out 38, 39, 40?
Anybody that would have a doctoral degree already has a master's. So that's how that got crossed out. Because they're supervising.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
There is
That would be called a little cleanup language.
a little cleanup language, yes, sir.
Unnecessary words in the code.
Yes, sir.
All right, number 22. Chairman Hoffman.
Thank you. I unfortunately do not have the bill in my packet, but I would like to ask you then the direct question that the issue that was brought to me a few weeks ago by Brunel, that's been taken care of.
Yes,
this
sir.
bill?
Yes, sir. What I did is we had some major discussion over this bill, finally had a meeting with everybody, brought them all to the table, and that's how we ended up at this stature.
A lot thinner than it was, isn't it?
Yes, sir, it sure is. I want to thank Sean Marie too, because she has worked diligently on this bill, and we couldn't have done it without her. And I'm very appreciative of all the work that you've put into this too.
Very good.
Takes a village. Takes a village.
Any questions from any of the committee members? Anybody out there in the audience wish to have just a brief comment? Good, thank you. All right, what's the will of the committee? We have a motion due passed and seconded for committee substitute 5769S. Any further discussion? Any further motions? If not, all in favor say aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Let's have it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. House Bill 1175. Mr. Cannon, are you in attendance today?
Yes, sir.
Case Cannon,
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
He's virtual today, sir, but he does plan to testify on the bill.
I beg your pardon?
He's virtual today, but he plans to testify.
Speak into that microphone.
Chaz Cannon is with us. He is on Zoom to present the bill.
All
Sorry about
right,
that.
well, I guess this is gonna be a first. We usually give that discretion to committee members, but I guess we'll bend the rules today. Representative Cannon, are you with us?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
We can. All right, you're on.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, members of the committee. I'm here to present House Bill 1175. LC number is 339612. And purpose of the bill is to discuss why direct access to physical therapy services may lead to better outcomes for patients in Georgia. Just some background, we currently have a form of direct access called restricted direct access. And those who serve in the military or also in several other states allow direct access and have for some time. Direct access would allow patients to directly seek out therapy services while waiting to see a doctor if needed. Under restricted direct access, which is what our current law requires, the number of therapy visits is capped at 8 visits or 21 days before having to pause therapy and wait for a referral from the patient's doctor to continue going to therapy. So at that point in the process, the patient's health insurer will also typically require additional documentation from the physical therapist to prove medical necessity before more visits are granted. Physicians also review that on the insurer side to determine whether there is necessity. And so for the patient, they're going through 2 separate processes to continue seeking that treatment. 1 through the insurer side, insurance provider, and 2 through their physician. This can be a burden for the patient, and is why direct access could be a method to streamline this process for simplicity. If a patient requires physical therapy for a longer term than 8 visits or 21 days, they must pause the therapy, wait for an appointment with their physician to get a referral, and then resume treatment at some point after that. So the question is, can this process be improved upon for the patient? For patients who can get in to see their physicians quickly, it is less burdensome. And for those that don't have a physician that they can see quickly, it's much more of a hurdle. And certainly there are times when the physician needs to be re-engaged with the patient, as well as issues that might require imaging, x-rays, or blood work. However, a physical therapist now have a doctoral level of training, and a large part of that training is focused on knowing when a patient is not functionally improving and needs attention from their physician. Physical therapists also get to know their patients one-on-one and spend a fair amount of time with them. As a result, both the patient and the physician and the therapist can likely identify early warning signs if a patient's not improving. And overall, and in closing, the potential benefit of a direct access model is that patients can continue to their therapy regimen while waiting to see a doctor. It could offer, in the end, a simpler, more streamlined approach to physical therapy for the patient. And Mr. Chairman, thank you for the chance to present this bill. For the testimony, if you don't mind, I'd like to turn it over to Lauren Paulo for a few points of interest as well, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm Lauren Paulo. For those of you who I haven't met yet, I proudly represent the Physical Therapy Association of Georgia. We do have folks here today, but given that many of you heard about this bill in subcommittee, and I understand that it is a holiday, I would like to have a patient just briefly make some comments about how this has impacted her. And then if after the bill is heard, if there's any technical questions, the association is here to fill in the gaps. Mr. Chairman, would it be appropriate at this time for Jennifer, our patient representative, to come make a few remarks?
Yes. All right.
Mr. Chairman, if you're comfortable, I'd love for the patient representative to come make a few quick remarks about why she supports the bill. Is that acceptable?
Well, it depends on how long she's going to talk.
Jennifer, you want to come up? Yes, a little bit is perfect. We can do a little bit.
Hello, thank you very much to the committee for allowing me to speak today. My name is Jennifer Ambler, and I'm coming to speak to you about this bill from the patient's perspective. I live in Forsyth County in District 100. Like many of you, I've had PT at various times in my life for several reasons. I have some chronic lower back issues, and when I moved to Georgia a few years ago, I had a flare-up. I realized I needed to manage my back pain like I have many times through PT, but I was told by my new Georgia PT, sorry, but you need to see a primary care physician before you can keep coming back here, which I'd never had to do in the state I previously lived in. I really appreciate the representatives bringing the bill because the 8 visits then referral system we have in Georgia is a nuisance for patients at best and a delay in treatment and pain relief at worst. I believe I deserve to have control over my care. That is something a lot of you have taken seriously. You protect us from mandates that don't make sense all the time. And while my doctor will always be involved in what I'm doing, it really is a barrier to stop what you're doing, schedule an appointment, wait to see your doctor to be told, yep, you can go back. Anytime I've done this, they have never had a concern about me going to physical therapy. I wasn't familiar with this requirement, and it surprised me. From the patient perspective, you're just waiting for a service you plan to pay for, you're just delaying it, and I don't feel like that makes sense. In an ideal world, there would be no waiting, but that's not the reality. We have shortages of primary care doctors, and while some of them are totally fine to just call you in a referral and go see a PT, others will only say yes to the referral if you physically come in, taking up valuable time for both of us, not to mention paying for a visit, adding to unnecessary costs for both myself and my insurance company. I think you're going to hear some folks get up here today and tell you how unsafe that sounds to them. Those people aren't patients, and I believe they have something to gain by keeping this mandate in place. I deserve to be able to access and pay for a service I want that is for my own health. Why do so many other places allow this, but not us? The military has always allowed it. Many, many other states around the country allow it. This just feels like a barrier that doesn't need to exist. Keep in mind, when we're engaging in PT, it's because something is painful or preventing us from doing our daily activities. I am not a functional person when I am in that much pain. While my doctor will always be involved, I don't need a gatekeeper to tell me that I'm allowed to access service I want to pay for, especially when I want relief that doesn't involve pain medications. Not to mention my PTs have always looked out for my health. They have twice referred me to doctors when I mentioned issues to them that couldn't be treated by PT alone. Thank you for making the time to hear my perspective. I am grateful to have the opportunity to participate.
Thank you so much.
And we will yield further comments, but we're here if there's questions.
Brevity gets extra points. We have to allow testimony. So let me be sure I understand before I start recognizing committee members for questions. So a situation like this, is it right now, physical therapist, you have to be recommended by a physician to get those services?
After the 8 visits, yes.
So in a situation that I'm very familiar with, there's a guy that has limited mental capabilities up in my home county that had an accident a couple of years ago. And he had what they considered to be a scorpion injury, where he had stripped all the muscles from the shoulder blades on down, couldn't walk, was sent home from the ER, and was basically in a pretty sad condition. Fortunately for him, he found a private pay physical therapist, even though that physical therapist wasn't supposed to have worked on him until he had a doctor's recommendation. But that physical therapist actually fell in line and actually got this guy back moving, in which he retained his services through private pay. This would allow that to be done legally.
Yes. And so it really is my hope that that individual who received that excellent care, that could be for all Georgians. That's correct.
Yeah, and that guy's pretty happy about all of this, and he's pretty happy with this bill.
And we love to hear
All
it.
right, questions from the committee, number 22.
Question, I just wanted to speak to the bill as someone who had a knee replacement. And I can tell you that after 7 weeks, I still needed more work. It was not a problem for me as far as my physical therapist calling my surgeon, who's also a patient. Both of them are patients of mine, so they're extremely nice to me since I drill on their teeth and hold the upper hand. But, you know, as a patient, this is a good bill. Patients are not going to be going to a physical therapist for fun. Often the insurance company no longer covers that treatment. Mine stopped. So I was paying out of pocket. So you've got 2 things. You got somebody that knows the need, has a problem, and willing to pay for it. And I don't think that person will be barred. You know, typically, I believe the physician should be the gatekeeper, and I still think that. But physical therapists also are highly trained. I have a daughter that's a physical therapist who has her doctorate. She no longer practices, so I can vote on this bill. She's retired. But I think it's a good bill. I think it's a good bill for the patient. And, you know, if we do anything down here, we do good things for patients, it's a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And that comes from pretty high remarks from my friend, the good doctor. Number 28.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't spend much time on health-related measures, so educate me. And pardon my ignorance if I'm off base on this. Apparently, this bill's not touching any kind of mandated reimbursement by insurance companies. It's just the board would, by changing, if we enact this bill, it's basically changing the rules of the board to allow quicker access for patients to get the physical therapy they need. Is that not
That's
correct?
exactly right. Through plan design, insurers can still have whatever policies make sense. So they still have control and some gatekeeping capabilities there.
So a follow-up question then, so of all the interested parties that might have come to the table on this particular issue, is there any pushback from any?
So directly, I've only had one conversation at this point. The Medical Association did express some concerns to me, but Mr. Chairman may know if anyone signed up to speak in opposition. I'm not certain.
Well, thank you. It seems like a good measure to me, but
Thank
thank you.
you.
All right, number 7, Dr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As one of the younger members of this committee who has not experienced the kind of pain that some of them have, but for my own edification, if you have need of a physical therapist, what is the difference in coming to a physical therapist and going to a chiropractor?
That's a really great question. And for that, I do want to refer that directly to a PT who can answer that
I think
technically.
she must have known. She stood up before I finished. Come on.
And this is Kathleen Geis. She is with the association and she can answer that question for you, sir.
Brevity.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Chairman, and thank you, committee, for having us. So to answer your question, the difference between a chiropractor and a physical therapist for treating knee pain, that's correct. Okay. So when we look at chiropractors, and again, we have colleagues that are chiropractors. Chiropractors do spinal manipulation to help improve function and movement. And physical therapists do likewise. We also provide spinal manipulation. However, physical therapist specialty is analysis and evaluation and facilitation of human movement. We're experts in the human movement system. So we integrate lots of things, not just spinal manipulation, but therapeutic exercise, manual therapy, joint mobilizations, neuromuscular reeducation, motor control to get patients back to functioning sooner. So we encompass multiple interventions and a very thorough assessment to make sure that we are dedicating our interventions to match how the patient is presenting.
Thank you so much. Let's see. Physical therapist, Bennett.
Brevity. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to add that I'm in support of this bill, and I'll let the subcommittee chairman speak to this. It is very patient-centered, constituent-centered. It allows for more availability and access, consumer protections, et cetera, cost containment and continuity of care. So I'd just like to add that, Mr. Chairman, it's a great bill.
Thank you so much. Physical therapist, Maynard.
Thank you.
Are you 24, 26?
Thank you, Chair. To support the bill, for the sake of the committee, I would just say that when you think about why this bill is important, therapists practice under the guidance of treating their patients to their optimal level of function. And with that being said, the Medical Association, although I did not speak to them directly, the pushback that I would give to the Medical Association would be a therapist would never put their license in jeopardy. So a therapist is not going to continue to treat a patient because that would be putting their license in jeopardy. And second, the insurance company is the gatekeeper if the insurance company is involved in that case. So I fully support the bill and thank you, Representative Cannon, for bringing it.
Thank you, ma'am. Number 26. Mr. Ridley.
Mr. Chairman, I was just gonna say this comes to my subcommittee also. It passed unanimously. We didn't have any pushback from anybody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, committee members, any other further questions from the committee? I think we know what this does. If there's any questions about it? We have a motion do pass. Do we have a second? Do we have any further questions, any testimony, any comments? If not, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Ayes. Aye. Aye. The ayes clearly have it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.
All right, House Bill 1096. Vice Chairman Washburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. I'm invited Gabe Sterling of the Secretary of State's office to join me to entertain any questions that are more technical than I would feel comfortable answering. I'm presenting committee substitute to House Bill 1096, which is LC 365760S. This bill deals with the fact that we have many licensees in Georgia that have continuing education requirements in order for them to continue to renew their licenses. And that process needs to be modernized. And as we understand it, we have to have a change to the code to enable the Secretary of State to engage an independent contractor, I guess the word would be, in order to provide better tracking of that continuing education and those credits. So to make the licensing process and relicensing process go quicker. And so that's what this bill does. It's a short bill, but it authorizes the Secretary of State to do that. And I will entertain any questions or ask Mr. Sterling to.
All right, committee. There you have the bill, and we have Mr. Gabe Sterling up here. And y'all might have other questions other than just the content of this bill to ask him about the licensing division today. All right, number 24.
Thank you, Chair. I support the bill. We heard it in subcommittee. As a physical therapist, we just had to renew our license at the end of last year. And the physical therapists, we already had to, by default, maybe we were the guinea pigs, I don't know, but by default, we already had to use the CE broker. And it was a delight. It was eliminated some steps that I did not have to take. Nowadays, most people are taking their continuing education classes online. And so I went to an online broker that partnered with CE broker, which meant when I took my classes, the classes were automatically uploaded into the program for me to renew the license. So fully support the bill. Thank you for bringing it.
Well, thank you, Representative, for those comments. You will find in your folder some other documentation from other folks who are in support of the use of CE broker as well as another contractor also.
All right. Representative Jasper, Chairman Jaspers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Washburn, just looking at, I guess, also Mr. Sterling, I guess the changes in the sub is that now they're mays instead of shalls. Is that what the difference in it is?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. If I can find the line.
26.
Yeah, it does add that it gives the boards the right to extend time because of a hardship.
I guess also, so when you're selecting them from the Secretary of State side, are you required to use a competitive bid process, or are you just married to CE broker?
CE broker is with 6 of the boards currently. We've already had discussions with Department of Administrative Services about this. Even though there's no cost to the user or to us, we would still have to have a competitive bid process of some type. Because, and you can set up the questions to say level of service and things, because for the users, there is no cost. For the state, there is no cost. The way that any of these vendors, CE broker being the largest and the one that's already used by most boards, they have 2 levels of service over and above the basic baseline service. That's how they would make money.
Explain that again. So there's no cost for the user or for us. How do they make money?
They have 2 levels of service over and above the basic baseline, which allows an individual licensee to upload their CE as best I can describe it, it's sort of a concierge level of service where they will go and find the CE for you, sign you up, make sure you're doing it, follow up with you. Then the one below that's kind of like, here are your options, and you can pay for those, and it's a annual fee. I believe is it annual or monthly? The monthly fee.
So are you required to do this competitive bid, to review them to make sure that this vendor is the best one, or how does that work?
The way it would work is if we were going to do one for everybody, we would have to do a single bid-like process through the DOS following the Georgia procurement laws. Even though there's no cost associated with it, we would have to find a way to do technical point scoring on those things. Yes.
Okay, it's curious, because I'll follow Chairman Powell's lead that if this would help reduce the complaints that we have all received this past year on board work, it would be a pleasure to vote for this. But, you know, just as a seatmate here talked about physical therapy, I've got one today who's been kicked off from December to January, now February, now March, because the board or something can't get his information corrected. I mean, I guess, you know, following Chairman Powell saying, that's our biggest complaint. It's how it's going. This, you know, individuals and different licensing have had just a terrible time with your oversight of the boards. And if it has really been hard for me as a state representative to answer constituents' questions, because I can't get answers from your people. And we send emails to your folks and we get response back at some later date.
Well, there's two things. I'll get to your first part of your question. Yes, this will absolutely help, because one of the things, there's two things it can do. It can protect the licensees, because right now we have cases where licensees will go to somebody giving continuing education. They pay a few $1,000s to come back, and they're not recognized by the board. This would have a thing with the board where they would say, these are the approved vendors for this process. So protect those people. Secondarily, right now, we have to look at 3% to audit to make sure they're actually doing their CE. If using this system, we would have 100% audit, because we would know that the vendor was good and that they were on time with their continuing education. So that frees up time from both the licensees and from our staff, so they can focus on getting licensing and renewals done, as opposed to chasing some of this down with all the different things we have to do. Specifically to your issues around the new goal system, there was an issue directly out of the gate starting in October where verification was off, in large part because people's emails or the names were not matching what they thought they were. They signed up 10 years ago using their, you know, their school, and they signed up as Bob Smith instead of Robert Smith. And we figured out most of those things. And the biggest one was obviously the PTs, and they're at 87% registered now, which is well ahead of what they normally have for the renewal time. They're normally about 84, 83%. So we're working through those things as we get the new process in, because the old process, one of the things we discovered is there was an average of 6 touches between analyst and licensee before anything got moved. The new system, once it's fully running, allows a lot of the work to be put onto the licensee before an analyst ever has to look at it. And as a dashboard, so they can see, I'm missing this, I'm missing this, I'm missing this. Was it perfect on the rollout? No, it's the verification and login. But once they're in, that system is working well. Now we've had over 45,000 people log in. We've given out 3,800 licenses and done about 18,000 renewals. So for the 90% of the people who've done it, it's worked. It's always those little onesie, twosies, ifs and outs, and out of a population of 600,000. If you have a 2% issue, you're going to get calls, and we're going to get calls, and we're working through those individually. And obviously we want to get it done just as badly, if not worse, than you do.
No, we want to get it done worse. They vote for us.
Well, if that's the case, we would also at this point say we bring in $24 million to get $8.5 million every year to run the things. We had a little bit more and have more personnel. We could get these things done more quickly and answer your questions more easily.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We got several questions from several of the committee members. You've just answered one of the questions that I haven't had an update on. You said that y'all, the licensees are raising 20, how much?
24 million.
And y'all are being budgeted for
8.5, give or take.
This is something that I've talked about for several years. When I was, my first committee assignment was over occupational licensing 34 years ago. One of the things that I learned about at that time at the Secretary of State's office was that it was an operation that brought in huge amounts of money, but not enough was ever returned to them to do the job they needed to do. So because of that, it's something's been a sore spot to me, that the consuming professionals in this state that are licensed aren't necessarily getting the best service. One of the issues that I understand y'all have right now is that y'all are shorthanded in the licensing division.
Yes, sir.
And I think that there was some money put into the budget for that.
I don't think we've seen any in the 25 budget yet. We had 145,000 of temporary dollars for the amended 24, but outside of 25, there has been no additional dollars other than the raises and the DOES changes.
But there should be some money going into the big budget to carry those temporaries forward, shouldn't it?
I would certainly hope so, sir.
Let
And the
us
wisdom
all
of the
hope
General
so.
Assembly, I would acquiesce to.
Now, in relation to the question that the good chairman had raised about the gold system,
Yes, sir.
you know, this started thanks to Representative Bennett. She alerted several of us to this issue prior to all the barrage of phone calls that we started getting from constituents. Dealing with the physical therapist, of course, now it's moved on. My medical masseuse that worked over me on the weekend let me know in no uncertain terms, while her license is several months out, that she can't get a phone call answered. Of course, it's not a problem to her because I know the right person to call down there. But try to help them. So can you give us a little feel about how is the gold system coming? Are the bugs being worked out of the system?
For the most part, the bugs are being worked out of the system. The main thing is the verification on the front end, because one of the problems we had in the old system was we weren't verifying the individuals who were basically getting access to PII and information in those licenses. So now we are tying an individual to an individual email and their individual verification. Now that is a problem for some of the licensed professions, because the security guards like having one email for their 100 security guards. And that's been a problem we've had to work through, but we aren't going to have individuals' private information available to somebody that's not them. So that's a security concern that we've done. And our CIO used to say, if it's not a little bit of a pain in the butt, it's not real security. So we are working through that, and we changed how we did verification. And like I said, we have managed to work through most of that. I've had discussions with our vendor, telling them it's clean to make sure it's working properly. The PIN numbers that we've done have worked for the 95% of the people. It's always those 5% that we're off. And I listed off the numbers earlier about how we're going. And we put off the next rollout until we have everything merged. Because one other issue that happened with the vendor was we're supposed to allow for multiple licenses under individual emails. They built it without doing that. So we're having to merge records individually. There's about 100,000. We can do about 3,000 a day. We have staff working on that now. On the call-ins right now, we have about 20 or so people trained to answer professional licensing board calls. We have a queue set up to take 100 calls at a time that will call you back. Outside of that, you have to email or go to the website. And we're averaging around, at this point, we got to about 1,800 calls a day. Now we're down to about 800 calls a day. So that's another issue. If we had more bodies, we could get to those calls more easily. But overall, we are happy with the rollout, getting to where we are. Because like we said, we are ahead with licensing on PTs in terms of where they would be at these junctures. Auctioneers and used car parts is the next one that's coming up. They'll be March 31st. And we have another tranche about to go out in about 11 days, I think, that will go out. But every new software role is going to have some of these issues. And for the most part, the average person's been doing fine and getting through. It's always the ones or twos off. And I apologize to Representative Washburn for having to sit here for his bill to answer these questions. But his bill will help us with a lot of these things as we move forward.
No need to apologize. I can assure you, you'd rather be answering these questions sitting next to Chairman Washburn than being called up here special to the committee.
Every day and twice on Sunday.
All right, Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Washburn, Chairman, for bringing this bill. As it's always amazed me that when we look for the enemy, it usually ends up being us. I've never understood why we're taking 3 times the money and underfund the department and wonder why our constituents complain. Because it is a pain in neck. I'll say the neck. Okay, I'm hoping that we can see some relief. This is not new. Before I was elected to the legislature, I had some friends in Secretary of State's office. One of them was a homeboy, Curtis Atkinson from Brunswick, and I'd call and help people then. it's always been a nightmare. A person should be able to pick up the phone and get an answer right away. And I hope whatever we need to do, that happens. And for us to have, it just bothers me that even in surplus times, we have understaffed departments. Absolutely no excuse. But that's not saying that y'all are not without fault now. I don't want you to misunderstand me, because every once in a while, y'all need to get rid of every robot in America and start answering questions when folk call in.
Thank you so much. You went from questioning to editorializing there, Representative Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two quick questions. The first one, when we do get these phone calls, who do we call? Who do we send our constituents to?
He's not here, so Sam Teasley, myself, and we have a general mailbox that we can take some of these things, but we try to be as responsive as we can, as quickly as we can on all these, and those would be the main starting points. And we like having a narrow number so we can always track them, because what happens is some people will send it to 5 different people. We're all chasing the same dog out there, but it's a waste of resources. So funneling it through myself or Mr. Teasley to start is the best way to do that.
Okay. The second question is that for the vendor that you're talking about using, are they going to be responsible for approving the CE classes or just collecting information?
They are collecting information. It will still be the board's decisions on who approves the curriculum, who approves the vendors of the CE. And in some cases, statutory how many hours, and sometimes it's by rule. So it was still, where it's by rule, it would still be that. The continuing education vendor, whoever it is simply a platform by which the licensees can load it on, and then our analysts can see it quickly, and it is tracked, so we can know if somebody's missing it.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Very good. If I might ask a question, since you're sitting next to probably one of the most consummate real estate professionals in the state, Mr. Washburn, he and I share licenses as real estate brokers. And over at the Real Estate Commission, I've tried to use the way they have done some things that I think is just great. And I want to try to relay that to see if this is coming close to what y'all will be doing with this real estate, with the C&E broker. At the Real Estate Commission, every agent, every broker, everybody's licensed. We have a password, we have a username and all of that. And we go in, and I can go into that, and I can look on my roster of all of my agents. It shows when they were posted with my firm. It shows when their license is due for renewal. But then on the side, it has a listing that they're due for their continuing ed. Now, the Real Estate Commission sets the approved courses and curriculum for any C&E provider. And then that provider sends that to them electronically, and it's automatic. It's amazing to me that you can take a C&E in real estate and it's already posted the next day, which is unusual for government or quasi-government service. Is that similar to what this is going to be with y'all?
That would be the intent in most cases. There may be some outside CEs that are not necessarily tied completely, as Representative Maynard was talking about. The one she did was tied to CE broker and uploaded automatically. There may be other ones that may not have the API to do that, the technological connection, but that would be the intent overall. And one other thing on real estate, there was a Supreme Court case in 1974 that said they got to keep 100% of their fees to run their office, and they're administratively attached to our office, so we can keep track of that and see what they're doing. It's been very helpful to them over the years.
Very good. All right. Chairman Ridley.
Yes, sir. I'd just like to say this came through my subcommittee also. We've been pretty busy. And we didn't have any pushback at all about this, and I think it's a great idea. And at the proper time, I'd like to make a motion to pass.
This would be the proper time. All right, we have a motion and we have a second. Do we have any other further questions, discussion? Any other motions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. And by the way, you have a very special lady down there at your licensing division, and I'm not going to mention her name again publicly, because if folks figure out how to get in touch with her, they'll be on your list of folks trying to, but she knows who I'm talking about, and I think y'all do too. but she is a wonderful lady, always trying to do what a public servant should be and an employee should do.
So all of our employees are wonderful and trying to do their best.
And by the way, for the committee members, Mr. Sterling is quite the gourmet brisket chef. I think last year he tried to bring a small sample by the office, and with a little enticement, y'all might get him to bring lunch one day. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank
Thank you,
Mr. Sterling.
Deputy
as well.
Secretary.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank
All
you.
right, last but not least, I've been saving this bill because there might be some discussion on it. Hopefully not, because it certainly wore me and everybody else out. We have House Bill 880 by Representative Ballard. You have a new substitute. I think we've only killed about a forest full of trees with the different versions and different substitutes.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for all the work that you have put in helping me get this bill in shape. And thank you, Sean Marie, for all the hours. I actually started an email to Sean Marie one day with, "Don't kill me, but I need another sub." And thank you for hearing this bill. And I have this newest sub that we just did today, LC 365783S.
Go right ahead.
Okay, so this bill does three things. It ensures that Georgia is compliant with the new federal law regarding military spouse licensure. That is the new section of the Service Members Civil Relief Act that was signed by President Biden in July of 2023. It's going to meet the Department of Defense requirement regarding the timeliness of military spouse licensure. And it's going to allow military spouses to get to work as soon as they get to Georgia. And this will be one of the strongest military spouse protection bills in the United States regarding licensure if it were to pass. Some of the changes you'll see from the current code, spouses can begin to start their application for their license by endorsement before they move to Georgia. So when they get their orders in their hand that says they're moving to a Georgia military installation, they can go ahead and start as opposed to waiting until they get here. The employer may go ahead and begin that verification process of the license to make sure they're in good standing. Our employers in military communities, there's such a constant changeover in people that it's often, they often need workers immediately, and this will give them that freedom and that flexibility to do that. Then if the spouse meets Georgia's requirements and they're not issued their license or they're denied their license within 30 days, they can get to work. So this will just allow them to get to work while they're waiting on these boards to do what they do. And I think I printed out, or Miss Jan printed off a sheet for y'all that has military spouse facts by the numbers. Georgia has 10 military installations. This is an economic impact of between $19 and $20 billion for our state. And in a base community, that base and all the people that come with it represent about 27% of that area's GDP. And why that's important is if the Department of Defense doesn't like what a state is doing as far as being a military-friendly state, they can take missions away from your base. They can make the whole base disappear. And I want y'all to imagine in your communities if 27% of your GDP just up and left your town one day, it would have an adverse impact. We've got 57,000 active duty service members and 25,000 spouses in Georgia. Now, the next one, I want y'all to think about this. The unemployment rate for military spouses is 21%. And that is often because they can't get licensed when they move somewhere. They're often out of work for 9 or 10 months. And when you're only at a base for 24 months, being out of work for 10 months is a hardship. And it's a hardship on women and children, because 90% or so of our spouses are women. So we want to make sure that these spouses can get to work and get that second income and get involved in their communities. So does anybody have any questions?
All right. Thank you, Representative, and I think just cut it to the chase. The necessity of this bill is the Commission on Military Base Closures. They have a ranking system about certain things that make states acceptable or more so acceptable for bases. And one of those categories is about how easy it is for military spouses to get work. And I understand that Georgia was at like a 0.
We got 0 points in that
And
category.
we got 0 points. Now, my understanding is that the substitute bill in front of you that has been crafted with an untold amount of hours from the good author, with help from Chairman Martin and some others,
Thank
has all
you.
gone into this, that this bill in front of you would probably put Georgia at the top of the national list.
I think it would.
Which that's quite surprising because I haven't seen anything good that comes out of the federal government, but they should recognize this. Now, questions. Mr. Williams, of course.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for bringing the bill. I represent a post that 25% of this 20 billion is with us alone. $5 billion, the economic impact of Fort Stewart. 71% of our population is either directly or indirectly tied to the military. And so it's always good. And the most dreaded word in any community is called BRAC. BRAC is what you referred to as their grade. We've been blessed. Fort Stewart has been the top military base in the Army 6 times out of the last 8 in the entire world. The biggest challenge, and I thank you for this bill, it does some things that have been in law a long time here in Georgia, like licensure for spouses when it comes to teaching. Problem has been, and the military, local community, and the state shares responsibility here, is the lack of spouses knowing what's available out there. They just don't know the laws that have been on the books, and we've done about 60 in the last 8 years. Thank you for the bill. I just hope that we let people know, public announcements or whatever, the average person getting out or spouses that are in does not know what Georgia offers.
I've worked really closely with all the chambers of commerce in all of our military communities, and I think they will be committed to making sure the word gets out when new spouses come to our communities now.
Okay, I hope you worked with Leo Poole at Liberty County
I've worked
Chamber.
with everyone.
All right, I met Leo, I got one.
Thank you, Representative. Even though the truth of the matter that Fort Stewart remains in such good shape is that they don't want us to turn you loose on Washington. All right, Chairman Carpenter.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to say thanks for the bill. I hope that when this happens and we're able to issue these licenses in a more rapid fashion, and we see it's not the end of the world, that this can also apply to the general population. So it's a good bill, and I appreciate you bringing it.
Thank you, and I think that that's a worthy goal.
All right, let's see. Where do I start? Chairman Hawkins.
You know, in the past, I've had a little trouble with this bill because, just coming from a state, if you're licensed in another state, doesn't necessarily mean that it's equal to what we have here. Some states allow, for dentist example, some states license them without them graduating from an accredited dental school. In other words, a foreign dentist, they just go ahead and give them a license. But now under this, with this legislation, RN code, we've got lines 35 and 36, which essentially says that they meet or exceed the requirements under this state to obtain a license. So that's still going to be in effect.
Yes.
Right? So we're not going to rush them in like under line 46 without being licensed by a licensing state board. So they're going to come in and be able to practice in this state without a license from our board. Is that correct?
If their license is deemed not suitable for Georgia, not up to our standards, or if they've misrepresented
Right.
themselves, it can be.
They cannot practice.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right.
All right, number 12.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman. A quick question. Is it possible for someone to operate in this state without ever having their license been reviewed? And what made me ask that question is lines 67 through 70.
I don't think so, because they will begin the process and with our licensing boards, and the boards will be looking at their license. What this is just allowing, so right now, code says a military spouse is given a license, is supposed to be issued their license within 90 days, and they can't get to work without it. But on the ground, they're not getting their license for 9 or 10 months. So this would just allow them to start working while that application is, and a board is looking at it.
Follow, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
So for instance, let's say that the board drops the ball, forgets your application. But still though, as far as the question that I'm asking, would someone be able to operate in this state without ever having their license been reviewed?
Well, the employer would actually be looking at their license and making, the employer would be able to make that decision. I think our military employers are smart enough to look at that license from that previous state and make a determination whether they're a good fit for our state and for their place of business. So I think that even if a licensing board dropped the ball, I think an employer would be able to make that determination whether that person can work or not.
I think the answer to that question is what we're doing. We're going to a 30-day window to meet the requirements of this commission or whatever. If the licensing board does not answer in the 30 days, then they can go to work, but they'll be working for someone else. And most of the professions, nobody's going to hire somebody that doesn't have a certain level of expertise. But then the board can come back and they can review, or whenever they reach out to them, they can, if they haven't met the specifications. If that helped any. Chairman Ridley.
Thank you. I would just kind of like to reiterate on that question. From what I understand, what the extensive conversations we've had about this bill, and thank you for your work on it. Day one, you come in, but it is the employer's responsibility to go through that package and make sure that you do have those licenses and stuff before they hire you. Once that's done in that process, then it's sent to the board. You can go ahead and start work on that. The employer has overlooked that until you get your license expedited through the state. Is that not correct?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
And because they're now able to do it before they even get here, like that, the determinations will start being made before they even get here.
So once I'm notified that I'm in the military and I'm going to Warner Robins, I'm been moved. How long do I got before I'm probably going to actually move?
It depends. Some services give you a longer warning. We moved once with like 6-8 weeks notice, but still that's,
So you got plenty of time to get,
you do.
you go ahead and
really
get all
do.
your stuff sent in.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's the only thing I have, Mr. Chairman. At the proper time, I'll make a motion if everybody else wants to vote for this bill.
Excuse me. If you'll hold that motion for just a minute, Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Because of my question, I do have reservations about this bill. I think it's a fantastic bill. I believe that should be fixed, and hopefully that could be fixed in the Senate if it does make it out of committee today.
Let us hold on for just a second. We're having a discussion to be sure we've got the last T crossed in this. Very good. Representative Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to, not necessarily a question, but more a scenario to answer your question. If I'm hiring somebody in mental health and not a military spouse, just anybody, I have to make sure their license is valid. Then I have to submit it to the state. Let's say I've decided to hire you, I have to submit her packet to the state and wait about 30 days for the state to approve. And this is with a license that's already there. So if a military spouse moves in and it takes 6 months for her to get her license to work in mental health, you're looking at another month and a half, 2 months before they can actually work. So this cuts down for me in the mental health field, and I know this is a lot of licenses, but in the mental health field, this helps tremendously. And this is, when we're talking about mental health and the shortage that we're in, this is very, very helpful for the citizens of Georgia. This is going to make an immediate impact for employers like myself who are trying to hire fully licensed individuals. So I have no reservations. Thank you very much. And I think this is going to be helpful for the citizens of Georgia.
Thank you.
Do I take patients? No, we have a waiting list. We have a waiting list.
All right. All right. Do we have any other questions from any of the committee members? No questions from committee members. Well, before I stand for motion, I want to thank Chairman Ridley. He's actually done a yeoman's task with all of these bills. I am quite surprised we've let a few of them get out without any amendments, but that's to the credit of council. Somebody must be doing something pretty good over at council that we've had so many bills that passed without being amended or substituted. And of course, Sean Marie does an excellent job. Only person I know on a Friday night at 8 o'clock, she's still working. So thank you so much, Sean Marie. All right, what's the will of the committee? We have a motion. We have a second. Do we have any other discussion? Comments? Other amendments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes clearly have it. And your bill will be reported out with the rest of them tomorrow. We can't report them today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So
I
they'll be
appreciate it.
reported back to the clerk's office. So there you go. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank y'all for your tolerance today. I want to thank Representative and Chairman Jaspers again for filling in on the previous subcommittee. And I'm sure he'll be reaching out. This meeting is now adjourned. All right.